CSS3 introduces lots of new pseudo classes which allow you to select page elements in new and interesting ways. Let's get started. The first pseudo class we're going to look at is interesting, and it's also very simple. The root pseudo class allows you to select the root of the document. So let's give it a try. So I'll switch over to the code here, and I'm just going to type :root, and we'll give it a background of orange just so that we can see it. And when we switch back to the browser and refresh, you can see that the whole site has turned orange. In a valid HTML document, this should be the HTML element, but keep in mind that regardless of your markup, this root pseudo selector will select the root element of the document. Like I said, that's a pretty simple selector, so let's move on to something a bit more advanced. So I'm going to switch back to the code here. And let's say in our list of links, you wanted to highlight a particular one, but not the others. You could apply individual IDs to each link and select them that way, but that's pretty cumbersome, and sometimes you don't even have that option. The nth child pseudo selector makes all of that much less complicated. Let's start out by highlighting the first link in our list. So I'm just going to delete what we have here, and we'll first select our nav element, and then we'll select all the list items, and then we'll say nth child, and we'll give it a value of 1. And actually, instead of changing the background to orange, how about we change the border instead to 5 pixels solid orange. So when we switch back to our browser and refresh, you can see that our first link here has been highlighted. So let's go back to the code and see if we can try out a few more things here. Basically, in this selector, we're first selecting the nav element by ID, then we're selecting all of the list items within the nav element, and then we're filtering those list items down to just the single one that we want. Now, if you just wanted to select the first element, you could use the first child pseudo class, which is already present in CSS2. However, the nth child selector is useful because you can select any of the individual children by number, not just the first one. So let's try selecting the second link in. So change that to 2, and when we go back to the browser and refresh, great. So if you had a really long list of items and you wanted to select one of the last ones, you could go ahead and do that. However, it might be annoying to have to count from the first item all the way down to the one that you want in a much longer list than the one that we have here. When that's the case, there's one more selector that you can use. So we'll switch back to our code here. And similar to the nth child selector, we can use the nth last child selector. So let's go ahead and try that out, and then I'll explain it. So I'm just going to change this to nth last child, and we'll keep the value of 2 here, and we'll keep our border as well. So we'll switch back and refresh, and you can see that this forums link here is now highlighted. So let's switch back to the code. We said nth last child, and we gave it a value of 2, and now we have our third link selected. That's because instead of counting from the beginning like nth child, the nth last child selector counts from the end. So let's put in a value of 1 instead, and maybe this will be a little bit more clear. So we'll just change this to 1, save that out, and when we switch back and refresh, now our last list item is selected because we're starting from the end. That's just the first group of CSS3 pseudo classes. In the next video, we'll take a look at a few more.